All right, thanks, Joe, and welcome to AM Coffee. And today we will have a friend of mine, actually, Tom Townsend. He's a certified general appraiser. He's a home inspector here in the state of Georgia, and he also owns the Townsend Realty Group here in the northern suburbs of Atlanta. And it's a Keller Williams agency. They handle all kinds of houses from big to small, and you can actually find out more about them if you want to, and we will give you more about this at the end. And you can go to townrg.com. So, how you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me on.
yeah, sure, sure. Tom and I've known each other for about a year now, and we've grown to really appreciate each other. And you started with dealing with houses at a very early age. Tell us about that.
Well, it probably took me a while to really reflect back and understand where the roots of my passion for real estate came from. But really, it started at a very young age. And when I was about 5 years old, our family decided to build a second home. It was a cottage. I'm up in the Midwest, and cottages are very common up there, and that's what we refer to as second homes up there is just cottages, right?
Mhm.
But that started at age 5. So just about every single weekend and during the summer months, we would always trek up into northern Michigan and build our cottage. Now that took about 10 years. My dad took his time. It was a hobby instead of a career for him. But I really grew and had a passion for just building stuff and
Wow.
specifically homes. And so I always reflect back on my childhood, and that is the glaring light that I really enjoy about growing up and being a young person and
Yeah.
spending time with my dad and my family and such. So, yeah, I just kind of grew a passion for construction at that point and real estate and just kind of, like I said, just kind of building stuff. So that was the root of where that passion came from.
That's great. And the family is still very important to you. I know you work with your wife and your daughter and at your realty group.
Yeah, we do. We actually, it is definitely a family organization. We have my wife's a realtor, my son is a realtor, and then we also have my daughter who recently graduated from college. Just because of everything that's going on with COVID, she's got a marketing degree, and then she's doing all of our marketing and social media and things like that. So,
Sure,
yeah,
I
we
can see
definitely have
that.
some family members. We have some others that aren't, necessarily part of the family, but yeah, the family's definitely together and working together. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And now being a appraiser and a home inspector has got to kind of help with when you are selling a house and you're listing a house, it's got to help as far as knowing what something is worth.
Oh, absolutely, it does. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's been integral part of our success, and one of the values that we provide our clients. Just having that background as far as construction is concerned, and the appraisal background, and being a home inspector. I can bring a lot of different value to our clients that a lot of other agents may not have. They may not have that in their back pocket.
Sure, sure. I know that in full disclosure, y'all, that back in January, Tom actually listed my house for sale, and it went swimmingly. I know the market was terribly hot back then, and I think we had a contract in 48 hours, signed and sealed and ready to go. Is that
I think
correct?
so. From what? Yes, I
Yeah,
remember because it was hot and heavy. Well, it was hot and
yeah.
heavy, wasn't it? I mean, we had people
It,
clamoring for that home.
If I remember right, yeah, I think that the people, as soon as you put it on the market, because you had put a sign up in the yard ahead of
Yeah.
time saying that it was coming soon, and somebody had driven by and said, I want to see that when it's ready, and they had called you, and it was like within an hour after you put it on the market, actually officially, they called and wanted to see it. So, and they were the
Well,
people who bought the house.
yeah, I think you're right. And now, listen, you've got to understand that when you have a really nice home and it's in good condition and it's priced right in today's market right now with everything that's going on in today's market, it's going to be very attractive for folks. And that's not really an uncommon story, Mike. Um, However, it goes to really the root of the fact that it was a nice home. The house is in great condition. It was in great location. It was appropriately priced, And when you have all those little bullseyes, when you hit all those marks, in today's market, it's such a seller's market and such low inventory of homes out there, you're going to get people just, you're going to have people competing for your home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just the market we're in
You know,
right
my,
now.
my wife misses that yard still.
Does she
We
really?
still,
It was, yeah, it was
we
great.
only moved 8 houses away, so we still drive by once in a while. And, they'd have done changes in the front yard that my wife had, all those bushes we had along the driveway, gone. They
Yes.
pulled them all out.
Did they tear
And my
all those
wife's like, I
out?
can't believe they did. Yeah, they pulled
Isn't
them
that
all
hard?
out.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
talk about an emotion. See, real estate is so emotional for people, especially
It
residential.
is.
Because, I mean,
Yeah.
that's where you grow up. That's where you raise your family. That's where you've got so many
Yeah.
memories attached to residential real estate. So we don't
Yeah.
ignore that piece either, but I didn't realize they tore all those bushes out. It's too bad.
Yeah, and we were there 17 years in that house, and
Yeah.
we built it from scratch, and it was my wife picked out everything about it, and well, we picked it out, but you know how that
Yeah.
goes. But yeah, it was her home. It was our little nest, and it was, my son was 12 when we moved in there, and he just turned 30 recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, things that was part of our marriage. We spent more than half our marriage there. So yeah,
Yeah.
it certainly is emotional. We also didn't have neighbors. We have some neighbors behind us, in front of us, and everything now that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
So all these things are good if you're looking for a house and you're looking to
Yeah.
sell your house. You need to weigh all those things, because neighbors can make or break a happiness factor, I would think.
Oh, absolutely, they do. That is part of the overall story that we always tell about residential real estate, and that we take a look at and we help
Yeah,
clients with. Is, hey, we got to go. You got to look at the location and your neighbors, and really find out if this is the place for you when you're looking to buy in a new area specifically. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but yeah,
And you
neighbors have
just don't know. They have what? Oh,
uh, yeah,
the
your
effect.
neighbors have a huge impact on the the overall happiness scale, if you will, as far as
Yeah,
where you're living.
yeah.
That's for sure.
We lived in town in Cartersville prior, and we were there I think 7 years. And our next door neighbor, it's funny, and I don't want to discourage anybody from buying a house, but you just don't know. We were working on a third neighbor on the one side, and for whatever reason, it turned over a couple of times in that quick a period of time. But um, it ended up where people were coming in and out of the driveway all day long, and there were packages being delivered all day long.
Yeah.
And it's like, and we're kind of dorky. We don't know this, we don't see the signs. I'm not real savvy with the 21st century at all, but it is there were signs that we should have picked up on. But anyway, I was working night shift. I woke up one afternoon, there were cops with their guns drawn in my front yard. I would They hadn't planned on talking about this, but yeah, they were pointing at my neighbor's house. And come to find out that all those people that were coming in, we thought it was motorcycle parts he was selling, because he was into motorcycles. And
Yeah.
he seemed like an okay guy. He was kind of quiet, didn't really say much. My wife was good friends with his wife. So anyway, they showed up one day with guns drawn and took him away in handcuffs, and ended up he was getting meth in the mail from Massachusetts, from UPS, was sending meth to him, and he was distributing it here. Yeah. I'm like, you
That
gotta
is
be kidding me. This is just
in the mail. In the
in the
mail.
mail, in the mail. Yeah. There was no lab. There was
Yeah.
no lab locally. I guess in Boston, they didn't care if stuff
That's
blew up. But
good.
and then it was like,
That's
I
crazy.
don't know. It ended up being a federal crime. He ended up I saw his ex-wife now, uh, at our local Dollar General the other day, and she said that he ended up doing 10 years. So because it was a federal crime, it was across state lines.
Yeah,
But
across
and
state
then it
lines.
wasn't long after that that yeah, the house, I think 2 streets over, 1 street over,
Mhm.
um, he was in a beef with his neighbor, and he was walking in, and had groceries in his hand. His neighbor came out and shot him dead in the driveway. And it was at that point I told my wife, I was like, "We gotta go."
We got to go.
We cannot stay here any longer. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a
So
meth
yeah,
distribution center next door.
I know. And it was a
Well,
nice neighborhood. It wasn't like it was the hood or anything. I mean, it wasn't nice, but it was, middle class. Uh,
yeah.
You just
Hey,
don't.
those things happen everywhere. You'd be
Yeah.
surprised of just how much that occurs in the nicest areas that you would think. As a matter of fact, they kind of like that, because they're not as glaring as it would be in maybe some other areas. But
Sure,
you're lucky
it's a
he
good
wasn't
cover.
putting meth in the house, because that would be considered a hazardous material. And that would, I mean,
Oh.
that house next door to you, if they were cooking meth in there, it would have been
Oh
shut
yeah.
down.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been done,
Yeah.
shut down. We have all kinds of disclosures when you go through the real estate process. We have to ask people if that meth has ever been cooked in the house in the past, not them specifically cooking it, but if it ever had
Sure.
meth cooked in it. Yeah, yeah. So you're lucky he didn't cook it in there,
I
and he was just
know.
buying it,
I know.
distributing
We
it.
we kind of keep to ourselves. I don't really, I didn't get involved in anybody's business. I know
Yeah,
what was going on over there.
that's
Uh,
funny.
but
Uh,
that was really weird. Now, we determined the market was pretty hot back here in northern suburbs of Atlanta. It was very hot back in January. Is it still hot now?
it is. It's kind of interesting if you look back over the last, well, since COVID. Let's look at just 2020, right? So we have been over the last quite a few years just on this clip, this appreciation of about 4 to 5% every single year, low inventory, lots of sales. So we've been on this clip for about 3 or 4 years, and then when COVID hit, it took a nosedive. And so we being agents and people in the real estate industry were like, okay, here it is. It's going to slow down and we're going to shift, right? Everybody's getting ready for this big shift. And it lasted about 6 weeks. And about the beginning of May, let me see, COVID hit what, February, March, right? March, it was bad.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
all locked down in March, right? March,
Yeah.
April.
I think March
Yeah,
everything
about
locked
the end
down.
of
Yeah.
April, beginning of May, man, the floodgates just opened up again, and phew, this thing has been cranking ever since. So, and as a matter of fact, it's
Wow.
even harder to find a home right now, just because a lot of people pulled back, and people that were going to sell decided not to sell at all. So they never put their houses on the market. But yeah, if you're a seller right now, it is a feeding frenzy for your home. If you're a buyer, there's inventory out there. You're going to have to use an agent to find it. You're not going to be able to just,
Hmm.
in my opinion, and I'm kind of using this as a broad brush comment, but it's going to be very difficult for you to jump on Zillow and be able to find a house and be able to buy that home, because most likely it's gone and under contract
Yeah. It's
before it
turned
even
over.
hits the Zillow system. You gotta use you have to really use an agent that's out there and beating the bushes to find a home for you.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Do you think what's causing this being such a buyer frenzy? Do you think the interest rates are a big driver of that, or do you
Yeah,
think it's
no,
something
absolutely the
else?
rates are. So that is probably the primary driver of the demand. Money is basically free right now. It's the lowest rates ever,
Yeah,
in history, I believe.
yeah,
So if you've,
I think so too.
you can just borrow money, right? And it gives you more buying power.
Yeah,
Buyers can have more buying power than they ever have. So that is a major contributing factor. The second one is that we're in a growing area. Real estate's local. We always say, don't, you can listen to the national statistics and news, but really when it comes down to it, you got to look at what's happening in your local area and your local market. And right now, our area is still growing. I'm in Cherokee County. I don't know where this gets broadcasted out. Everywhere. Okay.
everywhere. We're
So right
everywhere.
here in
Yeah,
our little local market in North Georgia area, it's growing. We've got a great employment base here. And yeah, it's slowed down a little bit over the last few months, but people are still moving into this area, which spurs that growth. Our unemployment rate is relatively slow, especially compared to the rest of the nation. So we still have a lot of
hmm,
demand, and we have all this pent up demand. And so all of those things kind of contribute to the fact that, yes, it is definitely a moving and active and what we refer to as a hot market. or a seller's market, depending on who you're talking to.
Sure. And I hate to kind of touch on politics here, but really the government here in Georgia, of course, they have their issues also, but they have made it attractive for businesses to move here because they have given tax incentives and think what you will about corporate taxes. I think when corporate taxes go up, they end up kind of looking around for places where they're lower. We've had manufacturing facilities here in my county popping up probably about once every 2 months. There's been something. There's a road that I live near that I used to go to work every day. That since I retired a year ago, just under a year ago, there is, I think, 7 or 8 more places that are on that road that have popped up and employing between 2 and 800 people each one. And, where you have people that are working, you have people that are buying stuff, that are paying taxes. And so, I mean, yeah, you lower the taxes on some things, but it kind of gets made up in other areas. And that's not a political statement. I think that's just that's just good financing. That's just good uh, thinking as far as a state goes. If you make taxes more attractive to businesses to come in, then you end up being better
Yeah,
off,
that's the
the whole
that's
state.
the way that our system is built. Our capitalistic system is built on that from an economic standpoint, right? That's just the way
Right.
it's built.
Right.
So it always starts with large corporations. And when you can give breaks to those folks, everything else moves down. They move those. It's amazing how they can move a plant. I'm always like, gosh, it's got to be so expensive to move a plant from Mexico to Georgia, a
Right.
manufacturing
Right.
plant. But man, they do it in the
You would
drop of a
think
hat. Oh, no big deal. They crunch their numbers and the numbers all make sense to them in order to do that. And that always is kind of
it has to. Yeah.
amazed me that they can do that. But they do. And I talk to people all the
Yeah.
time. They're moving. There's a lot of industry and a lot of manufacturing that's moving back in. Here in Georgia, I know a couple plants that are opening up, manufacturing plants that are moving from Mexico, and they're bringing their manufacturing plants back up into North Carolina.
Right.
I got a buddy of mine that's basically a controller, and he's moving up into North Carolina to be the controller for I think it's a Kimberly Clark plant. I may be mistaken. But
Okay.
anyways, he's going up there to operate a manufacturing plant up there that's moving back to the U.S. from Mexico.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that was all. And I asked him, I said, well, what prompted the move? And he was like, oh, it's taxes. It's more economic. We can make stuff cheaper in North Carolina now than we could have in Mexico. It changed. And he goes, and we'll go. That plant will go wherever it's going to be cheaper.
Yeah. Of course it would. I mean, just and that's why I never understood why, there are states that they tax the soup out of you.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I've talked to I used to work with some people from New Jersey, and they were saying that their houses, and they didn't have a big house, fancy or anything. It was maybe 2,000 square foot on a quarter acre of land, and they were paying $12,000 a year in taxes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you justify that? I mean, that's a lot of money. That's $1,000 a month just in taxes alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more than a lot of us pay for our mortgages here, or middle class people anyway. I think that it makes us feel better to say, the middle class is getting a tax cut, or we're gonna punish the rich, or punish the corporations that have been getting away with stuff. It's like, yeah, okay, I get that, but I think in the long run, if you take a bird's eye view of things, it does end up helping others because, uh, yeah, the rich are always going to get richer. I think that's just the way that goes. But yeah,
Yeah. And we kind of, it's that you get in that comparison competition in your own head sometimes, and you're thinking, oh gosh, well, those people are making so much money and it's not
yeah,
fair. And that's a dangerous cycle to get in.
it
It
is.
really is.
It
So
is.
you just have to check yourself. There's always going to be somebody making more money. It's got a nicer car, nicer house, and healthier. And
Yeah,
um, it's just easy to look and see the grasses, what you perceive as the grass is being greener on the other side.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so, but
Uh,
that's just the way it is. So I, I don't know about you, but I always just like, nope, I'm good with myself. I'm
yeah.
fine. And God bless them if they can make that much money. you know?
Exactly. I was
So,
talking to my daughter-in-law the other day, and she was talking about Bezos and how he's approaching being worth, I think she said $1 billion now
mhm,
or whatever. And it's like she says, well, nobody should have that much money. I said, being in America, I don't think we really can look at it like that. I think we have to go, we've given, the America has given him opportunity, and
mhm.
he hit the right market at the right time, doing the right thing. And yeah, God bless him. Like you said, if he can make that kind of money, then go for it. I'm
Yeah.
happy with my, my 5-figure income. I'll be just fine. So I mean, I think you're absolutely right. When we start looking at the grass being greener at other places, all that money comes with issues. All that there have been a lot of millionaires that have killed themselves. There's been a
That's
lot
right.
of things that you know, money is not the end all be all. And I think that once you start restricting what people can make or how successful somebody can be, I think that's a slippery slope.
There's a really good book I read, and it's called Outliers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
have you
Malcolm
read that?
Gladwell, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes, he's
And that's
fantastic.
kind of when the light bulb went on for me. One of the ahas that I pulled out of that was, there's a lot of outliers that are out there that you have no control over.
Right.
And they were in the right place at the right time in history,
Uh-huh.
and they had the right kind of connections and all these little coincidences, if you will, or outliers, of course, kind
Right,
of were
right.
perfectly in line for those people to be in the position that they were. And they saw the opportunity and capitalized on it.
Yep.
And so there is a randomness to how some people are super duper successful. And I don't want to take away from working hard and doing
No.
what you got to do, but the fact is, it, there are circumstances out there that put people in certain situations at the right time, the right era, um,
Mhm.
that they just capitalized on their luck.
And he specifically looked at in that book about, the Beatles and how much time they spent in playing in Berlin, I think it was, or somewhere in Germany. They played like 8 to 10 hours a day
Yeah.
for a couple of years. And then,
Yes.
of course, he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. Man, it's a fan if you have not read this book, you
Yeah.
need to read this book. It's fantastic. It
Yeah.
it gives you and it does exemplify the hard work and putting the time in and doing what you should be doing to get good at your craft.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that outlier status can
Yeah,
kick
and
in.
hey, Mike, we take that same philosophy when we talk about real estate and being successful in real estate, that 10,000 hour rule.
Mm,
You've got to practice your trade. You really
yeah,
do. And it takes 10,000 hours. And if you want to do the math, it's about 10 years. So
yeah,
if you really want to get good at something specific, you're going to have to dedicate the time and energy towards that and
right.
really sharpen that skill.
And that's certainly the American way, how things were meant to be here. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. Specifically, has COVID affected the real estate market here locally?
Sure.
I
Absolutely. I
mean,
think it's affected everything.
well, I
Right.
mean, other than the 6 weeks that you kind of saw the dip, I mean, is there something that you're still doing today that you weren't doing, a year ago?
Yeah, there are. So the National Association of Realtors has come out with some guidelines. Obviously our first, concern or first goal is to make sure that clients and everybody, the general public, is safe. So we've had to implement a lot of procedures and guidelines in order to do that. So the days of like open houses where you'd have an open house on a listing and the whole neighborhood would come over,
Mm,
those are a little more difficult. So we have some procedures in place. We still do open houses. However, we require masks. A lot of times we require booties on the feet. There's hand sanitizer. We'll only let certain people in. We kind of pace people
yeah,
to walk through a home. So there's a lot of those things that are actually going on. Going and looking for houses with an agent has changed. Some sellers don't want you in their home, right? They don't want to open the house up and have people walking through their home.
mm,
Thank goodness we're in an era that we have technology. So we do a lot of virtual walkthroughs. So we'll do video walkthroughs. We'll take video of homes and then we'll present that online. So people can just go online and go to a link and kind of walk themselves through the house, if you will. So yeah, there are a lot of different procedural things and guidelines that have been put in place to keep the general public safe.
Are those rules put into place by the National Board of Realtors, or is that just something the Townsend Group is, or Keller Williams has put in place?
Yeah, those are kind of a trickle down from probably the state, and then the real estate board has come out with some guidelines, which is if you're a realtor, you don't, a lot of people don't understand this. You can get a license to sell and real estate, but you don't have to be a realtor. So realtors is an
Oh,
additional layer on top of just getting your real estate license.
okay. Yeah, I
And
didn't
it's
know
more
that.
of a political action committee, if you will. Realtors are. We pay into that. However, they give us, we have to abide by a certain level of ethics. You know, a large emphasis is on our ethics, and then they give us our guidelines that we have to abide by in order to keep our realtor status.
So
You're just held to a much higher level standard as a realtor than you are if you just if you just have a hold of real estate license.
I gotcha. I gotcha. So a broker would be another layer up above what a realtor would
Yeah,
be.
broker is a different, just a whole different box, if you will.
Okay.
Um, so if you have a real estate license, that license has to be held by a broker. So brokers are usually owners of a company, and then they
Okay.
will have agents that work underneath them in that brokerage.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Okay, so it's a little bit different, but
So
yeah,
everything kind of has to pass through them in order to get approved and everything for anything that goes on in that realtor group.
correct. So I have for an example, I have a real estate license. I can't just go out independently and say, "Hey, I'm Tom Townsend and I'm a realtor, and I can transact with you, with the general public." My license has to be held by a broker. So I'm
Yeah.
really working for a broker. Think of insurance. I always tell people insurance is a good way to think of it. If I'm a State Farm agent, everything's going through State Farm. You're just representing State Farm.
I gotcha.
That's State Farm is the broker. Now that gets a little bit, and I can go out and get a broker's license and be Townsend Brokerage if I wanted to. I have elected not to do that because I don't want to be a broker, to be quite honest with you. There's a lot of headaches with being a
I was going to
broker.
say there's a lot of liability, I would
There's
imagine.
a ton of liability with being a
Yeah.
broker,
Yeah.
and you're dealing with a whole different level of issues on a day-to-day basis.
And
Um,
you're kind of a people person. You wouldn't be able to deal with the people like you do now.
Yeah, so a broker, a lot of broker responsibilities are just, contract disputes and disputes
Yeah.
between agents that are fighting each other, typically over money, or in between two brokers, or regulation or law. So you're dealing with attorneys all day.
Uh,
It's all contract disputing stuff,
yeah. Who wants
right?
that?
It's a
Yeah.
huge part of what brokers do. And to be quite honest with you, does not appeal to me at all. There's no money in that, to be quite honest with you. But
I would
uh,
imagine. Yeah.
not saying that they don't make money, but
Yeah.
you know, uh, on a day-to-day basis, I don't want to deal with that. We have an in-house broker that deals with all of that at Keller Williams. So all I have to worry about is going out and serving people, and
Man,
I
that's
just work with
fantastic.
people. Yep.
Yeah. So now here in northern Georgia, we have a lot of influx from other states or whatever. Are you seeing most of your buyers from out of state, or are they kind of moving from place to place within the state?
Yeah, we do have a lot of migration coming back into the state. I would say just us personally, our team, most of ours is right here local. I would say I'm kind of guessing, Mike, maybe 30% are actually migrating from other areas.
Okay.
However, if you take a step back outside of just what we have at Townsend Realty Group and you look at it as a whole, yes, there are definitely people moving into this area. And we can look at specific migration channels. A lot of people are moving down from the Northeast
Sure.
for a variety of different reasons. We have a lot of people from Florida moving back up. All right.
Yeah,
So,
I would think
I,
so.
yeah,
Yeah.
we could get into why that's occurring, but,
Yeah.
we just have a lot of people moving up from Florida. So those are two migration paths that we see quite a bit. Northeast coming down, Florida coming in. We're starting to see people from the West Coast starting to come in. When the movie production business was heavy and hot.
Oh
Now it's
yeah.
taken a big hit since COVID.
Yeah.
But before that, we were starting to see a lot of people from the West Coast moving in for the movie industry, which was kind of interesting. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we're not talking about movie stars or anything. We're talking about all the support people, the people
Sure.
that are building sets, and that's a whole industry that I didn't know anything about, but I kind of learned a little bit by some of the people that were moving into this area from that industry.
Oh, it was what was that movie or the series that was being taped down south of Atlanta, the Walking Dead? Yeah,
Yeah,
that
Walking
was.
Dead.
I mean, there was a lot of people involved in that, and we actually took the tour around that, and yeah, there's a lot of people involved, and
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, I've always, I'm from Florida, and whenever I go back, it's like just since I left in '83, just since '83, I go back and I mean, it doesn't even look the same. Of course, we had a hurricane go through back in the 90s that kind of wiped Hurricane Charlie back in the I think it was the late 90s, early
Mhm.
2000s that wiped out a lot of stuff, our high school and the whole thing. But yeah, I mean, it's just so full. Everywhere you go is just
Yeah,
people. And it's like it's almost like they ought to put a sign up there. Florida's full. Start
yeah,
going to Georgia, and
yeah.
but Florida has their own, and we were talking about taxation earlier. They don't have state income tax,
Mhm.
just like Tennessee does not have state income tax. In Texas, there's a lot of states that have done that. I wonder if Georgia has kind of stopped or pulled back from even going in that direction, maybe because our influx of people possibly could go through the roof and we're just not prepared for that. Traffic is already jacked up on going to Atlanta every morning anyway.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I
Uh,
really don't. But that is a good question. You always wonder what everybody's talking about at the state level.
You do, you do. Oh,
Oh,
we've got a friend, Scott Turner. We should ask him.
well, you know Scott. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
you
We
should
used to do
definitely
parking
ask him.
together at church. So
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right.
So we should ask him. I bet you, yeah, he won't be honest with us. He's a politician. He won't be honest with us. So now, how is the rest of the country? Do you have any stats on how the rest of the country is doing as far as real estate and how the sales have been?
Yeah, I think nationally, when you look at nationally, it's a healthy market right now, meaning that transactions are occurring. Buying and selling of homes is occurring. Okay, so there
Mm,
is definitely a market out there. I would say that if you looked at the industry as a whole nationally, it is a seller's market. Um, and so it's good for sellers. That's mean people are transacting. Now, once again, real estate is local. So what is happening here in Atlanta or even Cherokee County or in my neighborhood
mm,
specifically does not mean the same thing is happening up in Newark, New Jersey
right,
or
right.
Detroit, Michigan, or any other area. So you really have to look at it locally. If you really want to know how it's affecting you personally, real estate that is, and what direction it's going, you've got to get down nitty gritty into the local market. But to
Sure.
answer your question is, if you look at the national numbers, it's a healthy market. Now there's questions about how long is this going to last, right? I mean, we have a
Yeah.
lot of things that have occurred over the last 9 or 10 months that we are concerned about. And we may see a shift away from that seller's market into more of a balanced market and then maybe even a buyer's market. Um,
Okay.
However, I would put a caveat. We don't see what occurred back in '08, 9, and 10, that the Great Recession. We don't
Right.
see that occurring. This is totally different. The market as a whole is much more fundamental and it is supported by healthy financing, whereas that was really bad financing. It
Yeah.
was it was a train wreck and a perfect storm. So we don't see anything like that. However, we may see a slowdown here over the next 12 to 24 months. That's what we're kind of looking at and finding out how severe that slowdown is going to be and how is it going to affect everything.
Yeah, because you can't go top speed all the time. There's got to be
Yeah,
just like the stock market. It can't continue to go through the roof like it has.
that's
So,
right. Yeah.
so that's kind of interesting. So you do see what do you think would be the catalyst to this change that you see coming?
Employment. I don't think the rates are going to go anywhere. I'm not a rate expert, a financial rate expert, but everybody that we do talk to, when we talk to them quite often, said the rates aren't going to go anywhere anytime soon. And when they
Yeah,
say that, we're talking over the next few years. I think overall, we've all gotten addicted to these low rates.
yeah,
And uptick in rates is really going to be painful and bring the whole system down. So, we've almost gotten addicted to these low rates. This 3%
Yeah.
rate kind of
Yeah.
seems to be the new norm, right?
Yeah.
So it's not rates. Employment's going to be the big kicker right there. Employment and rate, and then people's income. Their affordability and
Yeah.
which is their purchasing power. And right now, since COVID, the government's come in, and if you had a federally related transaction, or if your mortgage is held by the government, which, let's face it, 80% of the mortgages out there are backed by the government.
Right, FHA or whatever. Yeah.
They've put a stay on foreclosures, so the banks cannot foreclose on you if you don't make your payments.
Ah,
They put a stay on foreclosures. So now people are, all those late payments, if you've decided not to make payments, you have to make those arrangements with your lender, of course. But those are going to be coming due at some point. It's not going to be forever.
it would have
So
to.
when that is lifted is going to be where we really see what's going to happen to this market. If people can't make up those payments or refinance and put whatever they've missed over X amount of period of time on the back end of their loan, which is what a lot of banks will do. They'll just kind of forgive, okay, you haven't made payments for 6 months. We're going to take all those payments and we're going to tack it onto the back end of your loan. And that's the loan modification they do. But if that doesn't occur, if they don't allow that, or someone doesn't go in that process, and we lift this, we lift the stay on foreclosures, that's where we're going to find out how this market really is going to
Wow.
react to that.
So I wonder if you're, I know this isn't your realm or anything, but I wonder if, since people would be in this situation, maybe you're 4 or 5 months behind on your mortgage payment, and you are going through a process of maybe putting those payments on the back end of your mortgage. I'm sure that affects your credit score, and how does that? I wonder how that would kind of shake out in the next year or so, and I just don't know.
Yeah, great question. I don't know if it's going to affect your credit score or not. I think that's one of those question marks that no one's been able to answer yet,
Yeah,
because of the rules are changing. I mean, it's just changed. This is a whole new
yeah,
world, right? This wasn't a bad decision on the consumer standpoint of getting into a bad loan. That's what they said in the Great Recession. Well,
right.
the consumer should have been aware. They should have known. They got into a bad loan, and they blah blah blah. So that's why they tacked it. They basically blame the consumer. This is
Yeah,
totally different.
yeah,
And the federal government really has done a good job of saying this is not the consumer's issue. So there is a lot of talk about, how is this going to affect my credit score? Is it? It shouldn't. Everybody's like, well, it shouldn't. This was not my fault. I didn't make
right.
a bad business decision.
That's true. Not this
I
time
didn't
for sure.
overextend myself, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
if you get laid
it'll be
off, you get
interesting.
laid off.
Yeah, yeah,
What can you do?
exactly.
I do remember, that reminds me, I do remember back in the 90s, when the early 90s, when we bought our first house. Our first of all, our interest rate was 7 something percent.
Yeah.
And but I remember sitting down with our bank person, our loan advisor, and said, you can afford a much bigger house than this. And I was like, and my wife and I had kind of sat down and crunched the numbers, that this is what we can afford every month without, feeling strained.
Yeah.
And we came out, and they came out with a number that was like $300 or $400 more than what we had come out with to begin with. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's like, I want to take a vacation. I want to eat regularly. I want to be able to pay my light bill. I mean, all those things. Yeah. So I can see where that would be such a draw if you didn't have, luckily, my wife is very good about keeping me grounded on certain things. And yeah, so we just kind of said, no, we're going to stick with what we have to begin with. And yeah, it just can't, as far as refinancing go, I know I keep getting these, I have a VA loan. I keep getting these IRRL loan package things from companies I'd never heard of. Um, and for everybody out there that maybe it keeps getting these, also go to bankrate.com. There's a loan. It tells you what the loans are going for all over the country, with different lenders that you've heard of, Bank of America, SunTrust, or whoever, Wells Fargo, and they'll tell you what the actual rates are instead of what these teaser rates that you just don't know with some of these smaller companies you never heard of. And maybe that's just me. I'm not a big risk taker when it comes to borrowing money from
Mhm.
people that I don't know. Um, but yeah, I mean, but the rates right now are basically the same as what they were when we purchased this house through you back in February.
Mhm.
I had to look it up because I was curious. It was 3.33 for a VA loan, and I think right now the VA loan is like 3.4. So I mean, it
Hmm.
hasn't really changed. So it's
Interesting. Yeah, I know we've been closing properties over, obviously we do this every month. But we've had some clients get underneath 3% now. I mean,
that's
I
fantastic.
had one, I think he was at 2.79 or something,
Yeah,
2.7 something. I was like, wow.
that's amazing.
So, and that was a conventional financing. So it wasn't VA or FHA or anything like that. That was conventional financing. I think it was a 30-year.
Oh wow.
I believe it was 30 years. Because originally I was like, did you get a 15? And he's like,
Yeah.
no, I did 30. And I was like, you got 2.7 something at 30? I was like, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
He must have a 900 credit score. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, he probably had a very good credit score. However, I was just like, wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So if
that's
some
like free money.
Yeah, I know, but that's the thing. It's like, why, when we bought this house, we kind of kept the money that we made on the other house and for different things, paying off, a car loan or whatever, and we left some money in the bank. That way, we're financing 3.3% of we financed everything out of this house, and it's like, why not?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it doesn't pay to kind of like pull all your savings out and leave yourself with $5,000. You just don't know what might happen.
No, that's right. You just got to be careful. I will say you have to be careful with taking a 30-year loan out and thinking, oh, well, I'll just do my car. Instead of having a car loan, a 5-year or a 3-year car loan, I'm going to do 30 years and I'll use the money out of the house and pay for the car.
Yeah,
Because now what you're doing is you're paying for that car over 30
30
years
years.
instead
Yeah,
of three. So
yeah.
you
No,
gotta look at that and take
I
that in.
certainly am not giving any financial advice. I'm just saying what I did.
And neither am I, by the way. We
No,
have
but that
great people we can connect you with that will
yes.
definitely are the experts in that area.
If you have any real questions and want real answers, still listen to us.
Yes, you will have a disclaimer at the end of this podcast, right?
I'm going to have to make one now.
Tom and Mike are just actors. They're simply
Yeah,
actors.
but we did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night,
Yeah.
and you have to be this old to get that joke. Anyway, so the next year or so, you think everything's gonna pretty much stay the same, and then they'll start tapering down?
We are cautiously moving into 2021. I mean, we're very optimistic.
Yeah.
We really have a good feeling about it. However, our eyes are wide open and
Mhm.
we are looking at a lot of different factors that could shift this market very quickly.
Sure.
So, and I kind of alluded to those earlier in the
Yeah.
podcast, but yeah, we're feeling good about it because the momentum is going. But believe me, we are watching.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of experts that are saying that 2021 we're going to see a shift. We're going to see a shift back. It's going to be more of a balance. Things are going to start pulling back. So
Yeah.
we're just going to have to wait and see.
A good dose of normalcy after 2020 would
Oh,
be very welcome, no matter no matter what it costs us.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I think everybody's ready to be done. A lot of people are ready to be done with 2020 and optimistic about what 2021 is going to look like for us. So all
Yeah.
I can say to consumers right now is pay attention. Just pay attention. If you're even thinking about real estate over the next few years, just pay attention. Don't ignore this. Pay attention to what's going on in the economy. If you don't have a good source to get good current market conditions and real estate conditions, outside of all the fluff, all right, you got to be
Mm,
careful who you're listening to, but just pay attention to what's going on.
sure. And it's always been one of those things. If it's a seller's market, which it is right now, and this is probably where we'll close it up. But if you sell your house very quickly at a good price, and you have to go buy another house,
Mhm.
you're kind of swapping seats on that one. You're kind of going to be paying more for a house than you would have, a year ago or whatever. So I mean, you kind of, it's a give and take thing. You get a good price for your house and then you buy your new house and you might get a better rate, but you're still probably overpaying to what an average market value would be, possibly. Is that correct?
It is. Yeah. So there, we have a saying that we say, will you allow the market to pay you or buy you out of that inconvenience? And basically what we mean by that is, yes, as a seller, you're in the driver's seat and you're going to see the market is going to pay you an advantage or a premium because of the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
And yet on the buyer side, you're going to have to give up what you made, that additional benefit that you had as a seller on the
Hmm.
buy side, because they were in the same situation that you were. So
Right.
it's a wash,
Hmm.
right? So we always just say, hey, will you allow the market to just work and end up buying you out of the inconvenience of what the market is doing right now?
Sure.
So
Sure. So
but yeah, that's something that we kind of come up against all the time. Some people are like, oh, I'm not going to move because it's so hard to find a house. They're out there. There's inventory out there. Is it low? Yes, but with a good agent, we find houses for buyers every single day,
sure.
right? So they're out there.
Yeah.
Um, and you may have to bend over a little bit on that buy side because it is such a seller's market. But if you sold your house and you received a premium, which you
Yeah.
should have as a seller's market, you're going to have to give that up on the buy side. So it's a wash.
Right, right, and that's kind of where I was going with that, because yeah, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul at that point, and
Yep.
it's just kind of, but if you are in the market to sell your house, I mean, it'll go quickly, and you'll be able to, within 30 days, you should be able to kind of have a new adventure in your living
Yeah.
circumstances. So
And that's the whole point is, usually when we sit down with clients, it's like, well, why do you want to move to begin with? And it's usually a change in lifestyle or
yeah,
some occurrence, some event happened where their current situation or their current home just doesn't fit their lifestyle any longer for a variety of different reasons.
yeah,
So you've got to have a pretty strong motivation of why you're moving to begin with. And we just go back to that. Hey, let's talk about why we're doing this to begin with,
right,
right?
right,
And is this temporary pain going to be worth the long-term gain that you're going to have by moving? And if the answer to that is yes, absolutely, then we're going to help you maneuver through that whole transaction. We're going to
right.
help you through this process.
Yeah. So I mean, like with us, we were empty nesters. We didn't need a 2,200 square foot house, so we found something smaller and in the same neighborhood we were in, and it made the move a little bit easier. It wasn't easy by any stretch, but yeah. So, but
And
if
you
you're
got a
in,
great house. You got a
yeah,
great deal and a
yeah,
beautiful home.
yeah,
And yeah, so it was
yeah,
you made out great.
God's blessing was all over this one for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. But if you're, I think if somebody's moving in, if you're moving in from another state to northern Georgia and the Atlanta area, especially the northern suburbs, you only take care of the northern suburbs, correct?
Yeah, pretty much
Yeah.
Cherokee, Cobb County, anything North Georgia. We always
Yeah.
say the North Georgia market area. So
Okay.
or I'm sorry, North Atlanta market area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anything north of Atlanta area.
Okay. So if you're moving in from out of state, or if you just want to move, Tom is, his people are very professional and have walked me through the sale and the purchase of my new house, and it turned out great. Everything turned out perfectly. So if you want to get in touch with him, it's townrg.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
And they have all their contact info on their website. They made the process very good and very easy, and it was wonderful. So
And can I share a phone number? Will that help?
absolutely,
All right. So
absolutely.
the phone number is 770-280-4560. 770-280-4560. You can call that number anytime. We'd be more than happy to talk to you about it.
Cool. And I'll put a link on all our social media when we put everything out there, and we'll be hopefully we'll drive you some business. It'd be great. Be
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
well,
That'd
thanks
be
for being
great.
on, Tom. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Mike. I really enjoyed it. This was fun. It's a
When
lot of
uh
fun.
when things change again, maybe we'll do this again, and we'll kind of give an update on the market here in North Georgia. So
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love
uh,
to do that.
all right,
Absolutely love it. I love talking about real estate and business and obviously enjoy your company.
And I learned stuff, so that's always good. If you can kind of like shove something in this rock hard head of mine, and it's a fantastic thing. So,
Yeah.
and don't forget to connect with us on social media. Our links are on the website amcoffee.us, and we've made it pretty easy for our social media pages. You go to Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You just go to the main site and go /AM Coffee Podcast. It makes it very easy. So thanks, Tom. I appreciate you coming on, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mike. I really enjoyed it. Thanks again.
Okay.